Hi everyone. Today I'm going to talk about a current issue that actually connects to a lot of the stuff we've been learning, especially about public opinion, elections, political participation, and how government works in real life. The topic I picked is voter ID laws and changes to voting rules in different states because that's something happening right now and it honestly affects more people than I used to think. Basically, in recent years, some states have passed stricter voting requirements, things like needing specific forms of ID, shortening registration deadlines, or reducing polling places. Supporters usually argue that these laws are about election security and preventing fraud, but critics say they can make voting harder for certain groups, especially like younger voters or people with lower incomes or people who move a lot too. And I didn't really realize before this class how complicated that issue actually is. I used to think when it was just like you show up and vote and that's it. But now I see there's more structure behind those things. One of the biggest ideas that connects to what we learn is public opinion. Public opinion really shapes political decisions, especially when it comes to election laws. If people believe voter fraud is common, even if it isn't actually common, they might support stricter rules. I'm sorry, because they feel like elections are insecure. So perception can matter almost as much as facts. That honestly surprised me because I used to think politics was mostly based on data and evidence, but it turns out emotions and beliefs play a huge role in what policies people support. Another connection is political participation. Voting is most basic way citizens participate in government. But participation isn't just about wanting to vote. There are actual systems that affect whether someone can vote or not. Like stuff I just said before in the beginning, like registration rules, deadlines, ID requirements, polling locations, because even small changes in those rules can affect turnout. Like if a polling place closes in a certain neighborhood, that might not seem like a big idea on paper, but in real life, it can mean longer lines or transportation problems, which can discourage people from voting. So the structure of elections can influence outcomes, not just like candidates themselves. Because, like, for example, I don't have a car. Matter of fact, I don't even have a license yet. So for the last election, my friends wanted to go vote. So I tagged in with them and but like if they didn't want to do that since the beginning, I wouldn't have been able to like go at least and try to vote because I don't have enough. I that back then I didn't have enough money for an Uber or like anything like that, and taking the bus was a problem because my schedule never really like aligned with the times they were picking up some of the students or people around. So it will be like really hard for me or like people like me to go vote. Political parties are also connected to this issue. Parties often support voting rules they think will help their supporters and oppose rules that they think might hurt their chances. So they're not just competing during elections, they're also competing over the rules of the elections. That made me realize parties are way more strategic than I thought before. They're not just groups with different opinions, they're organizations trying to win elections. And sometimes that affects the policies they support. Interest groups are another piece of this. Different organizations lobby for or against voting laws, found lawsuits, and try to influence lawmakers. Some groups push for expanding voting access, like making registration easier, while others push for stricter verification rules. Before learning this stuff, I kind of assumed laws just got made because leaders decided something was good, like a good idea. But now I understand there's usually pressure from multiple sides, and policies often come from that push and pull between groups. This topic also connects to how the government responds to citizens. Elections aren't supposed to be the main way people hold leaders accountable, but if voting becomes harder for some groups, then representation might not fully reflect everyone. That doesn't necessarily mean it's intentional, but it does show how important election rules are. They don't just organize voting, they shape who actually ends up participating, which then shapes who wins, which then shapes what policies get passed. So it's like a chain reaction. Something that really changed my perspective personally is realizing how real these barriers can be. Like last year, I actually had a situation where I went to vote and I couldn't because my registration didn't match my address yet. It was frustrating and honestly kind of embarrassing because I had to get out of the line and wait outside for my friends to finish. But in my defense, it was my first time voting, or at least trying to vote. And that made me think about how easy it is for someone to get discouraged from voting if they run into problems like this, because not everyone gets told how this type of things you're supposed to do them. Like in my family, like this is not something my parents will like discuss about on the table. So I understand that being a citizen obviously gives you the right to vote, but you have to keep up with all the information to the date if you want to be able to go use those rights too. Elections are obviously central to this whole issue. Voting laws directly affect how elections work and who participates in them. Different types of elections, like local versus national, can also affect differently depending on the rules states choose. And because states have a lot of control over the election procedures, voting experiences can vary a lot depending on where someone lives. That's interesting because it shows how federalism plays a role too, since election administration isn't completely centralized. But overall, I think this issue matters because it shows that democracy isn't just about voting itself, it's about how voting is set up. The rules, the access, the requirements, all of that shapes participation. Before, I kind of saw elections as just events that happen every few years. Now I see them more as a system that are constantly being adjusted and debated. So, yeah, my biggest takeaway is that voting isn't as simple as I thought. Election laws are neutral details. They can influence participation, representation, and ultimately government decisions. And that honestly made me pay more attention to policies about voting than I ever did before.